I've been diving professionally for more than 20 years. I've surveyed coral reefs, repaired oil pipelines, recovered lost cargo, even trained military divers. I thought I had seen it all. The beauty, the danger, the unpredictable nature of the sea. But one dive, back in 2014 off the coast of Nova Scotia, nearly broke me. Not because of injury or equipment failure, but because of what I saw down there. Something that, to this day, I can't explain, and maybe don't want to. We were contracted by a small salvage company. They had picked up a strange sonar return about 9 miles offshore, resting at roughly 180 feet. That depth isn't trivial, but it's manageable with proper decompression stops. On the screen, the return looked like a large object partially buried in sand. The company suspected it might be an uncharted wreck. Maybe a fishing trawler, maybe something older. Salvage laws can be lucrative if you're the first to claim it. That's why they called us. The day of the dive was calm, the kind of rare clearwater day divers dream of in the North Atlantic. My partner Dave and I kitted up and ran through checks. Full face masks, dry suits, redundant air supplies. We had a drop line marked, guide reels, and a surface team tracking us the entire time. By the book. At 30 feet, the world softened into that bluish haze that always feels like slipping between dimensions. At 100 feet, the light dimmed further. Fish darted in and out of my periphery. By 150 feet, visibility shrank, and everything became muted, like sinking into another planet. And then it came into view. Not a ship, not any kind of vessel I'd ever seen. At first, I thought it was a smooth outcrop of stone, shaped by currents. But as we drew closer, I saw it wasn't rock. It was metallic. A vast, curved surface, half buried in sand. It had no rivets, no seams, no corrosion like shipwreck steel. It gleamed faintly, almost like polished chrome, despite being under the ocean for who knows how long. I placed my gloved hand on it, and instantly, my regulator stuttered. My depth gauge flickered. Dave's dive light cut out for a full second. And the surface, it was freezing. Colder than the water around it. So cold I felt it burning through 3 layers of neoprene. That was the first time my gut told me. We shouldn't be here. But divers are stubborn. We circled the object, trying to identify what it could be. The thing stretched into the gloom, far larger than any fishing boat. I tried to signal Dave to keep his distance, but he was already tracing its edge, fascinated. That's when I noticed something odd. No fish, no crabs, no barnacles, no algae. The seabed around the structure was bare. A perfect sterile ring, like life itself avoided it. In the ocean, everything gets claimed. Wrecks are usually crawling with growth within months. But here, nothing. Just empty sand. I was about to call the dive when something caught the corner of my eye. A shadow. I turned and froze. There was someone standing on the seabed. At first I thought it was another diver. Maybe someone had followed us down. But no, the figure wasn't wearing any gear. No tank, no fins, no mask. Just standing. It was tall, thin, almost skeletal. The face, if it had one, was hidden behind something smooth, featureless, like a mask that shimmered when the light touched it. I blinked. It was gone. My heart hammered. My regulator hissed too loud in my ears. I spun, flashing my light in every direction. Nothing. Just sand, metal, and darkness. I swam hard to Dave, grabbing his arm. He tapped my shoulder, signaling calm down. He hadn't seen a thing. I was about to signal to ascend when my floodlight flickered again, just for a split second. But in that second, the figure was back. Closer. Watching. I lost it. I yanked Dave toward the ascent line, and we rocketed upward faster than protocol allowed. He fought me. Rapid ascents can kill you. But panic won. My ears screamed with pressure. My chest burned. By the time we broke the surface, I was half convinced we were still down there. Hallucinating. Back on deck, the surface team tore into me for nearly blowing deco stops. Dave was furious, demanding why I'd panicked. I couldn't answer. Not in front of them. But later, when we reviewed the dive footage, something shut everyone up. Because in one frame, just one, as the camera panned across the wreck, there it was. A figure. Standing. Watching us. The surface crew swore it was a trick of light. A shadow. Maybe a glitch, but Dave and I knew. He didn't admit it outright, but I saw it in his face when he froze the frame. That thing was there. We never went back. A year later, I heard another team had tried. Their dive ended in tragedy. Equipment failure, they said. 2 divers didn't make it back up. Official report called it a malfunction. But I can't shake the thought. Maybe it wasn't a failure. Maybe it was the wreck. Maybe it didn't want to be found. Some wrecks aren't wrecks, they're doors. And some doors should never be opened. If you ever find yourself sinking deeper than the sunlight can reach, remember, not everything that stirs in the black water is a fish. Some things move in ways no theory has ever explained. Before you mistake the shadows for safety, like, comment, and share this. And subscribe before the pressure crushes more than your lungs. Because once you see what waits in the abyss, you can never unsee it. The first time I dove beneath Antarctic waters, I thought I was prepared. I'd logged over 300 dives in every condition imaginable. Tropical reefs, blackwater descents, even salvage operations at night with visibility so poor, I couldn't see my own hand. But nothing in the world could have prepared me for the absolute merciless silence beneath the Ross ice shelf. It's a world humans aren't meant to touch. The water is just below freezing, held liquid only by the immense pressure. Above, the ice shelf forms a ceiling miles thick, turning the ocean into a sealed tomb. Sunlight doesn't reach here. It's not just dark. It's the kind of darkness that makes you wonder if your eyes are even open. Our expedition was funded by a university project, sampling microbial life that survives in these alien conditions. The official line was Science for Climate Research, but one of the lead researchers, Dr. Kerr, pulled me aside before we launched. His tone was clinical, but his eyes betrayed something else. Fear. "We've recorded seismic disturbances," he said, handing me a printout of jagged readings. Not earthquakes, something rhythmic, something moving. I brushed it off. Divers live with scientists. They always chase ghosts in their data. My job was simple. Drop through the borehole drilled into the ice, gather samples, and surface alive. But when you're about to descend into 2 miles of ancient black water, words like rhythmic movement tend to stick in your head. The descent itself was disorienting. They lower you on a line through the borehole, a glowing cylinder carved into the ice, with hot water drills. It's like being swallowed by a glass throat, your own breath echoing off walls of frozen centuries. At the bottom, I tipped forward into the void. My dive light stabbed outward, cutting maybe 30 feet before vanishing into black infinity. That's when I felt it. The pressure of space. Not the physical weight of the water, though that was crushing enough, but the mental weight, an awareness. The suffocating thought that the darkness itself was alive, watching, waiting. I started sampling, scraping biofilm off the underside of the ice, vacuuming tiny crustaceans into collection tubes. Normal work, normal motions. But my mind was not normal. My ears strained, expecting something, a sound. A movement. Anything other than my own bubbles. And then I heard it. A low hum. Faint. Pulsing. Not mechanical. Not static. It vibrated through the water like a voice too deep for words. My chest tightened, and instinctively I killed my dive light. The blackness was total. Suffocating. But the sound grew clearer. Rhythmic. Just like Kerr had warned. I turned slowly, fighting the surge of panic. At first, there was nothing. Just dark. But then, something shifted in the distance. A flicker of movement, vast and slow, like curtains stirring in a breeze. My brain scrambled to process scale. How far? How big? And then my light caught it. Skin. Pale, stretched tight like candle wax. Impossibly smooth. Impossibly large. My beam only lit a sliver, but the curve of it vanished into the void in both directions. Something living. Something breathing. I froze. If I moved, if I breathed wrong, I was certain it would notice me. My body screamed to ascend, but my brain whispered, "Don't!" Because rising meant dragging a trail of bubbles, and bubbles meant noise. The hum came again, closer now, and with it, the water trembled. The ice shelf itself groaned in reply, ancient cracks moaning under stress. I knew then I wasn't looking at an animal. At least, not in any sense we define animals. This wasn't a whale. This wasn't a leviathan. It was the ice itself. A living membrane. Something fused with stone and sea. Older than our species. Older than the continents as we know them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw upward and never stop. But before I could move, my radio crackled. "Diver 2. Status report." The voice echoed like a gunshot. My stomach dropped. The sound traveled. And the thing moved. Slow at first, but then accelerating. An endless ripple in the black. A body without boundaries. The hum grew deafening, shaking my bones. Lights on my suit flickered from the interference. I kicked upward in blind terror, no longer caring about stealth. My fins thrashed, bubbles roared, and I scrambled toward the borehole beam like a moth to flame. The ascent felt endless. Behind me, the water warped and surged, a tidal force in pursuit. I broke through into the shaft, lightless except for the faint glow above. The line jerked as the surface team reeled me in, shouting over the comms. But behind me, God, I'll never forget, a pale surface rose into the shaft, as if the whole ocean were following me. Not a mouth, not an eye, just the surface, just presence. And then it stopped. The hum cut off, mid-pulse, as though someone had severed a signal. The water stilled. Whatever it was, whatever it is, it refused to enter the borehole, as though the ice above marked a boundary it could not cross. They hauled me out shaking, teeth chattering harder than the cold alone could explain. The researchers swarmed, demanding samples, demanding answers. But I couldn't speak. Not then. Only Kerr seemed to understand. He put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "We woke it, didn't we?" I never dove under the ice again. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear the hum. Faint in the back of my skull. Like the pulse of the earth itself, waiting for the day it rises again. And I know this. Some things should stay sealed under ancient ice. Some things should never be found, because they were here long before us. And they will be here long after. I've been diving wrecks for most of my life. Some people chase storms, others chase thrills. Me? I chase what lies forgotten beneath the waves. Rusted freighters, sunken warships, lost yachts swallowed by storms. Every wreck tells a story, and I've always thought of myself as the one left behind to hear it. But what I found 2 summers ago off the coast of Nova Scotia wasn't supposed to exist. It wasn't on any chart, it wasn't on any sonar. It was a ship that shouldn't have been there, and maybe still isn't. The dive started ordinary enough. A local fisherman swore he kept snagging his nets on something big about 20 miles out. He figured it was rocks or maybe debris from a storm, but he offered me coordinates with a shrug. Normally I wouldn't bite. Something big usually turned out to be something boring. But the weather was good, and I had a restless itch for a dive. So I loaded up my gear, slid into the Atlantic, and dropped into the blue. At first, it was nothing but water, cold and endless, the pressure squeezing tighter the further I sank. Then, through the drifting haze, I saw it. A shadow the size of a city block. My chest tightened. It was a ship, but not like any wreck I'd ever seen. It wasn't rusted. It wasn't broken. It was whole. I hovered in disbelief, my dive light tracing across blackened steel and wood that looked wrong. Too new, but also too old. Like time itself hadn't made a decision on what century it belonged to. The hull was sleek, curving in ways that felt both modern and archaic. I swam closer, heart hammering. My depth gauge told me I was nearly 200 feet down, but the water was eerily calm, as if something held the currents at bay. I ran my hand along the hull. No barnacles, no algae, no life at all. And then, the name. Carved into the bow in letters worn smooth was a single word. Nereus. I froze. I'd heard the name before. Every diver has. The Nereus wasn't supposed to exist anymore. It was a research vessel that vanished in the 1960s without a trace. Lost at sea. Dozens of expeditions tried to find it. Nothing. Until now. I found an opening where the hull had split just slightly, like the ship itself had opened a doorway for me. Against every instinct screaming at me to leave, I went inside. The interior was pristine. My light swept across corridors that looked like they'd been abandoned yesterday. Tables bolted to the floor, chairs neatly tucked under them, papers sealed perfectly inside cabinets. But there were no bodies, not even bones, just emptiness. I moved deeper. The silence was unbearable, so complete it felt alive. I caught myself breathing too loud in my regulator, heart hammering against my suit. The deeper I swam, the stronger the pressure grew. Not the ocean's weight, but something else. Pressing in. Watching. That's when I heard it. A sound not carried through water, but through me. A low hum, metallic and alive, thrumming in my chest. It came from the walls themselves, as if the ship was breathing. I turned a corner and stopped dead. There was a room, large, circular, with walls lined in brass and glass. In the center floated something that didn't belong underwater. A sphere, smooth, black, and pulsing faintly with light, as though it had a heartbeat. My dive light reflected off it, but the glow from within refused to be swallowed. My stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but I knew this thing wasn't human. It wasn't meant to be here. I should have left. I should have turned around and kicked until the surface tore me free. But I didn't. I floated closer, hypnotized. The hum grew louder. My vision blurred at the edges. My chest tightened, lungs struggling even with the tank pumping air into me. The black sphere seemed to expand, swallowing my light, my thoughts, my very sense of self. And then voices, not through my ears, through my head. They weren't words, not at first, more like impressions, waves of emotion crashing into me. Grief, hunger, loneliness, and then finally a phrase that cut through like a blade. You found us. The room spun. My regulator slipped from my mouth. Panic surged, but I forced it back in, sucking air like it was my last breath. I kicked away, desperate, clawing through the ship's hallways, the hum chasing me like a predator in the dark. I don't remember how I made it out. One moment I was inside, the next I was breaking through the split in the hull, shooting upward like a bullet. When I broke the surface, I ripped my mask off and screamed, gasping at the night air. Night. It was noon when I went down. Hours had passed. The fisherman who'd given me the coordinates was gone. My boat rocked gently, untouched. I hauled myself aboard, shaking so hard I could barely strip off my gear. And when I looked back at the water, at the exact spot where I'd descended, there was nothing. No shadow, no ship, no trace of the Nereus. I didn't sleep for days after that. When I finally forced myself back to my charts, I checked the coordinates. They led to open water, 300 feet deep, nothing but sand. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear it again. That hum. Low, steady, pulsing. And sometimes I think about the voices. You found us. I never told anyone else. I don't think I can, because I'm terrified that if I say it out loud, they'll hear me again.